Hey folks, welcome back. Some of my viewers have been asking why I've been slow in making this particular video. Let me tell you why. Because unlike mainstream legacy media in South Africa, I actually reported on the story some time ago. And that story is that it doesn't matter what your legislators say. Apparently, a quirk in a previously passed piece of legislation gives the finance minister the authority to raise your value-added tax without any input from Parliament. Yeah, the media's just caught on to that. And so a lot of content creators are making videos about this as if it's news. But I broke this story a few weeks ago. Now, I'm not the source of it. I believe it was Business Tech that ran a story. And I read this story. I'm like, this can't possibly be true, can it? So I looked into it. And I researched and found out that apparently it is true. Shocking. So I told people on my live broadcast, I also made a prepared video about this subject, that the mere mention of a VAT increase by the Finance Minister, Enoch Gondwana, makes it a fait accompli unless the Parliament passes a law rescinding what he said. Well, that's not going to happen. So I reported on that, and then, strangely enough, Action SA joined forces with the African National Congress to pass the budget. But it turns out it doesn't matter whether the budget was passed or not, or at least goes on the next stage, because the VAT increase is cooked in. And what's even worse about all this, ladies and gentlemen, is that with the VAT increase, there's total confusion. You have some foodstuffs that are exempted, other foodstuffs are included in this VAT increase, and people are very confused about what's happening. So merchants are going to be blamed for this. People are going to say they're gouging people, they're price fixing, taking advantage of the fact that the VAT is increasing from 15 to 15.5%. But let's be fair to some of the merchants for just a moment. They're confused as well. Where does the VAT apply? Where does it not apply? They don't want to be non-compliant and then be hit by SARS with tax evasion for not charging you value-added tax on something they're supposed to put value-added tax on. So Finance Minister Enoch Gondwana said the only option was to increase VAT. That's not the only option. That's not the only option at all. You could have cut spending. He did mention it briefly, but he didn't seem to be serious about cutting spending. Why? Because the African National Congress is not serious about cutting spending. Now, they're happy with, dozens of ministries that are superfluous, unnecessary, that do nothing except sap the liberty of South Africans, with deputy ministers out the wazoo, blue light escorts, money squandered here, money squandered there. It's just insane how much money the African National Congress squanders. And we're not even talking about the social grants, the welfare system that they've erected for patronage to ensure that people vote for the African National Congress. That's not the purpose of aid. The purpose of aid is to help people in need. But people in need shouldn't be on welfare for their entire life. They shouldn't be producing offspring just to get more welfare. That's a broken system, but that's what South Africa has. It needs to be addressed forthwith. Otherwise, this misery will continue. But you're all going to face value-added tax on May 1st, whether you like it or not. It's cooked in. And it's astounding to me that the mainstream media have just discovered this. BizTech reported on it a few weeks ago. If I remember correctly, that was my source. And I reported on it after investigating it a few weeks ago. So why are you all surprised by this now? Where's the mainstream media? It's your job to hold the government to account. That's the role of the fourth estate, to hold the government to account. It's to report the news. You can put op-ed in your opinion section. That's your prerogative. You can do that. But your primary mission, your raison d'etre, your reason for existence, is to hold the government accountable to citizens. Does the media do that in America? No. Do they do it in South Africa? Gosh, no. So it leaves it up to independent journalists who are objective to tell you the truth about what's going on. So this isn't news to me. That's why I haven't done this video. I already know about the VAT increase. You should as well. But then, again, the media haven't been doing their job. They're too busy preoccupied with other things, like misleading you with op-ed on a news page disguised as news when it's actually opinion. So, what say you, South Africa? What I say is that you're screwed. You're screwed, you're blued, and you're tattooed. You're stuck with VAT increase, and it's not going to go away. And this nonsense, hearing from Action SA's Herman Mashaba and hearing from the ANC and Enoch Gondwana, this is temporary measure, is nonsense. Let me just give you a little history here. To finance the cost of the Spanish-American War, America's brief venture into imperialism, at the turn of the 20th century, 1898, the U.S. government passed a federal excise tax on telephones. Now, bear in mind, in 1898, almost nobody had telephones in America. Only the incredibly wealthy and a few corporations had telephones. We didn't have a nationwide telephone network. So imposing a tax meant that it hit the wealthy. Well, by the 1950s, everyone had a telephone. By the year 2000, everyone had a telephone. By the year 2020, everyone had a mobile telephone. But that excise tax remained in effect for over a century. They stole money from the pockets of the poor and middle class for over a century, and the wealthy, to finance the federal government, wasting money on a tax that was supposed to be temporary. Taxes aren't temporary, folks. Unless there's a major revolution in government, taxes are today, tomorrow, and forever. You're going to be paying 15.5, and then eventually 16% VAT. They're going to say, well, Enoch Gondwana's already said, hey, this isn't bad. It's not bad compared to other countries. Ours is pretty good. It's only 15%. Well, compared to the United States, which has zero value-added tax, it's pretty sucky. And I can tell you from personal experience that the scam that governments come up with saying value-added tax adds to the value. Therefore, it's not worth 100 Rand, it's worth 120 Rand. That's nonsense when you have 20% VAT. You simply tax people. And then you tax them on the value of what it is based on the taxes added to the value. You see how this scam works for governments? Anyway, there were other options. You're not going to want other options. But he doesn't seem to care about those other options. To be fair, he's in a tough spot. The ANC has no interest whatsoever in being responsible with the money they take from citizens' pockets. None whatsoever. And we see scare tactics now from SARS, the South African Revenue Service, threatening people who haven't paid their taxes. They're going to confiscate their passports. Well, good luck with that, folks. Good luck with that, especially if people are overseas. Anyway, that's the situation from here in the Western Cape and Hermanus. I hope that you're all doing well. But the VAT is cooked in. Nothing you can do about it, except throw the bums out the next election, then get rid of it. Your choice, South Africa, South Africa, Zanzi. It's up to you. Cheers.